Are you looking for a simple and effective training program to put on size and strength? Well, look no further. Today I'm going to discuss Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 program, and we're going to go over kind of the basic progression, the theory behind it, the principles that play into the program, and why, especially in my opinion, I think it is such a, this darn camera angle, I think it's such a great program for anyone to run for size and strength because of the way it has like kind of built-in auto regulation and the way it's periodized. So I'm Max with Max Performance. Please like, comment, subscribe. We'll get into the video. So, oops. Here, I got on the whiteboard, I have just the basic progression if you want to see it before we jump into it. Pretty simple. It's a 4-week block, 3 weeks on, 1 week deload, and not that you have to run it that way, but incredibly simple program. You're adding weight after every block. But yeah, let's get into kind of the philosophy and general overview of 5-3-1. So Jim Wendler is the author and creator of 5-3-1. He basically wrote 5-3-1 after he retired from a professional powerlifting career. And this was back in the West Side, like kind of geared powerlifting era. You know, he trained at West Side with Louis Simmons and all the guys from that era. Trying to think, I mean, I know Elite FTS. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember his name. But he trained with all those guys kind of in that like iconic early 2000s era. So he squatted 1,000 pounds. He retired from professional powerlifting, and he basically was super fat and out of shape and a fat powerlifter. And he was like, what now? And he was kind of, and Jim has a background in sports. He played football at I think University of Arizona. I don't think it was Arizona State. Someone fact check me on that. And he's a strong motherfucker. Like he's a strong guy. So he basically wanted to start lifting raw again, and he wanted a basic program to help him progress over time. And this is what 5-3-1 turned into. So and his goals at the time were to bench 405 raw, squat 600, and deadlift 600 raw. And he achieved those goals running this program. So pretty good. Whether he was on PEDs at the time, I have no idea. He could have been, he could have not been, just based on, he could have been totally natural running it, just based on his history and how strong he's been with a barbell. But anyways, pretty much the goal of 5-3-1. This is the philosophy straight from the book, and I have the original right here. This is the second edition. I've read this, and then I have Beyond 5-3-1, which I'm kind of working through right now. The original has basically what I'm going to go over, and Beyond 5-3-1 has a little bit more like variation to the program. You can tell like Jim kind of put more thought into it, and he kind of like was kind of getting a little more granular with the program. Sorry, the cat's meowing at me. So goal of 5-3-1 pretty much, or the philosophy, is you're going to utilize compound lifts, namely the squat, deadlift, bench, and overhead press, typically in a barbell fashion. You're going to start too light, and basically what that means is when it's a percentage-based training program. So when you're calculating your percentages for your lifts, you're going to start the program using 90% of your 1 rep max, what Jim calls a training max. And basically the idea behind this is your 1 rep max is the best you've ever performed on that lift. That's your record. So why would you use that to calculate all your training? Because you're not going to be performing at your absolute best all the time. No one does, unless maybe that's your job, then you kind of have to. But if you're training after work or training in the morning, chances are you're going to have off days. So why would you use the absolute best number you've ever hit to calculate your percentages for all your lifts? It basically gives you a buffer. And what I've noticed just from using the training max is by starting too light, you basically give yourself room to acclimate and basically like it's really easy to jump into the program. And once you acclimate, you get very strong, and it's easier to progress. It's hard to explain, but by starting too light, you acclimate well, you adjust to the program, and then you set yourself up for even better progress as you're moving through the program. So starting too light and using 90% of your 1 rep max to calculate the percentages is critical. Do not think that you don't need to do this, because you are going to mess up the program for yourself. Basically, the idea is by starting too light, you can run the program longer and longer and longer without having to track backwards. The longer you can add weight to the bar and keep going, the better. And it basically sets you up for success. So that's incredibly important, is start with 90% of your 1 rep max when you're calculating your training percentages, which we're going to look at. And again, progress slowly. So basically, after a training block, you're going to add 5 pounds to the overhead press and bench. And this typically what I've done is I've just added 5 pounds to either your training max, or I'll add 5 pounds to the lifts themselves. Like, I don't think it really matters. I could be wrong about that. Let me know in the comments if you think that's wrong. And then 10 pounds to your squat and deadlift. So you're just slowly adding weight. So like every 4 weeks, you'd be adding 5 pounds to your push exercises and then 10 pounds to squat and deadlift. Pretty simple. And that's kind of how you're progressing and progressively overloading in the program. And then a big point of the program is, since you're going to be starting too light, you're going to be doing higher rep sets for, and this is kind of where we can segue into the program itself. So if you look at this, you're going to have week 1 is like a 5s week, week 2 is a 3s week, and then week 3 is 5-3-1 week. And the last set of the first week, second week, and third week, you're doing an AMRAP set. So the big point of the program is to set and break PRs. And what these AMRAP sets do is it gives you a chance to push it really hard and increase, not, I guess, intensity in the sense of like weight on the bar, but it's like you can push the envelope a little bit and you can push yourself. These AMRAP sets, that's your chance to really push the envelope and like see where you're at. And the cool thing is with these AMRAP sets, you can use like a 1 rep max calculator, and you can get a general idea of where you are at, whether your 1 rep max is hypothetically increasing or not. Although, those calculators in higher rep ranges aren't always super accurate. It does give you an idea of whether you're progressing or not. So again, this is the program itself. It's like super, super simple. And that's what makes 5-3-1 so special, in my opinion. First week is 5. So you're doing 65% for 5, 75% for 5, and then 85% for 5 plus. And remember that percentage is based on 90% of your 1 rep max. I've even heard Jim nowadays suggest using 85% of your 1 rep max. So the idea is to start light and basically set yourself up so you can knock these first few blocks out. Like your first 3 blocks should be piece of cake. You should smoke it and build up a ton of confidence and acclimation to the program. Second week is 3, so you're doing 70% for 3, 80% for 3, 90% for 3. See, it's pretty straightforward, right? You're just adding 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%. It's not rocket science. It's an incredibly simple progression, but it works. The third week, you're doing the 5-3-1 week. So you're doing 75% for 5, which is kind of what you did there, 85% for 3, right? And then 95% for 1 plus. And like, just to give you an idea, like this, let's say you just started the block, this right here, that 5 plus week at 85%, you should probably be getting like 10 plus reps on that. You should be smoking it. Like, it should not be hard to get 5, let alone 10 reps. This week for 3s, maybe more like 7, 8, depends. And this week you should probably be getting 5 plus reps. And that just kind of depends on whether you're used to doing really low rep training or not. Like I'm coming from a place where I'm doing a ton of low rep training and I'm trying kind of segueing into some of these higher reps. So I'm having a little bit of trouble just from almost like a conditioning standpoint. So that's another reason why starting super light is important, because if your training has been different than what you're doing, it's going to give you time to adjust. So anyways, and then the fourth week you deload 40% for 5, 50%, 60% for 5. And again, this is something that Jim's brought up, is like you could do weeks 1, 2, and 3 and then add weight, and then 1, 2, and 3 again, and then deload. You could pretty much make it a 3-week block and then a 4-week block and not have to deload after every single time. That's really a personal preference thing. You're probably good to do that from the get-go. Maybe if you're a lifter who's really strong and you're using pretty high like intensities on the bar, like a lot of weight on the bar, maybe deloading every 4 weeks is absolutely necessary. I've always found that I could probably stack 2 blocks back to back and deload one time, like run 6 weeks and then deload. Or what I've done in the past, and this actually worked pretty well for me back in the day, is I'd run 3 weeks and then this deload week, I just go for like a heavy single on every exercise. Like in some cases, I'd set a PR on the single, but basically, since you're doing so much volume these weeks, by doing a heavy single that week, the intensity might be pretty high, but it's such a low amount of volume, it's basically a deload. So that's something you might want to look into. But that's the general progression of the program. And like I said, you just keep running this until you're like, you can't get one rep on that exercise. You know what I mean? Until you totally stall. Because I mean, like this first week, eventually it's going to get to the point where you're not getting 5+, you're getting like 3. And I mean, from there you could reset, or you could just keep running it until you basically can't lift any more weight. It's really up to you in that fashion. Maybe resetting earlier is a little bit better, but again, totally up to you. So that's the general program itself here. Let's see if I got any more notes. Jim recommends training 2 to 4 times per week with this program. I mean, 4 would be good because you could do a 5-3-1 bench day, 5-3-1 overhead press day, 5-3-1 squat day, and 5-3-1 deadlift day, right? 4 days right there. And then on those days, in my opinion, like you should probably be benching at least 2 times a week. Overhead press 1 to 2 times a week, depending on how much emphasis you want to give the overhead press. Squatting 2 times a week, and deadlifting 1 time a week is probably good, with maybe some kind of like hip hinge, heavy hinge assistance movement built in. So maybe like a stiff leg deadlift day, or maybe even like a light pause deadlift day, or a block pull day. I don't know, whatever, that's kind of up to you. But you can always, like on your 5-3-1 deadlift day, you could always have a lighter squat variation day where you're typically, I squat before I deadlift no matter what, but you know what I mean? Like you can get that frequency in by putting a lighter variation with a main movement. So like me, for example, if I was doing like squat 5-3-1, I might do my stiff leg deadlift on that day for like maybe a little bit higher rep or something. And if I was doing squat 5-3-1, or sorry, deadlift 5-3-1, I would probably throw in like a high bar pause squat or something on that day for like higher reps. Just, I'd call it more of like my easy squat day, or and conversely, like my easy deadlift day. And then, I mean, you could throw bench in any freaking day, like you could probably bench on your overhead press day and overhead press on your bench day. You know what I mean? So how you want to set that up is pretty much up to you. And I will say, like you should buy these books, because it pretty much outlines setting up the program like that. Like this information, like the basic progression, like this can be found online all over the place, but this is only half of kind of the deal. Like if you really want to run this program effectively, I highly recommend picking up the book and reading it, because you're going to get a whole different perspective on kind of what Jim was trying to do with the program. It's almost like buying an album of a band and you're reading the liner notes in the album cover. You're just going to get more out of it, and it's going to stick with you a little bit better and resonate, and you're going to like take it in a little bit better. So again, I recommend getting the original. And then, like I said, I'm reading Beyond right now, and it's awesome. It just adds more detail to the original. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, we could talk about assistance exercises a little bit. Like again, like after you do your main lifts and maybe your variation lifts after that, then kind of throw in whatever assistance movements you want to. If you like doing barbell curl, by all means, throw it in, whatever you want. And then in Beyond 5-3-1, Jim has all sorts of variations to this itself. So like you could add in sets after this AMRAP, and you could do, he'll call it like first set last, where basically you take these sets each week and you do like 3 sets of 5 for that after you do your 3rd set here. So again, the Beyond book has all kinds of cool variations in it, and I'm really liking it. So we'll cut it here. This is kind of a long video. That's Jim Wendler's 5-3-1, my favorite program of all time. I've ran it on and off for 10 years now, plus. It's always fun to interject it into a program. And if you're a beginner, great way to go. I mean, this is a program that could really apply to anyone. The nice thing is, if you are a beginner, you can use those AMRAPs to kind of recalculate your 1 rep max if the weights do end up being too light. So like there's a ton of flexibility built into the program. Anyways, I'm Max with Max Performance. I hope you liked the video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Any feedback is much appreciated. Have a good one.